So to open up season 3, we thought we'd do something a little bit different. We thought we'd share the story of one of our friends or a couple of our friends that we absolutely love. In fact, they've been big supporters of us. And actually big supporters of our nonprofit, Hope for Samson.
Yes.
And so part of the reason that they are so passionate in supporting us is because their story and how they started off.
It's pretty helpful if you have a couple like we have in our lives, a couple of people that you really look up to that have gone through this process before, that are going to be your cheerleaders, that are going to be there to support you, because you'll have a lot of people that don't understand your passion about this process. So to have people there for us like Jeannie and Steve that really did understand and that supported us and that cheered us on throughout those 2 years was really, really helpful for us.
This couple that you're about to hear from, Jeannie and Steve, I had the wonderful privilege a few years ago of doing their wedding. And what I thought was really interesting in this whole process is that a lot of times when you go into the process of doing the vows and doing a wedding, as the pastor, as you're standing there with those two people, they have no idea what they're agreeing to, right? Yeah. They're making some promises. They have no idea what it means to keep.
We didn't.
Yeah. But what's really unique about Jeannie and Steve is the fact that they did know exactly what they were saying yes to. They were married. They're actually kind of newlyweds, but both of them had lost their respective spouses to cancer. And they knew what it meant, for better, for worse, for sickness and in health, till death do us part. They knew exactly what those words meant. And so this couple means a lot to me in particular, because it was such a special moment to share that with them, and to see someone that knew exactly what it meant, sickness and in health, better for worse, death do us part. And they knew what those promises meant, and they took them, and they're absolutely in love with each other.
Mm-hmm. They're like teenagers.
Yeah. So here is their story.
May 27th.
5/27/17.
Well, we had planned to get married earlier. And Jeannie was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so trying to plan a wedding and work around her breast cancer, I just thought was a bad idea. And I thought that we need to take care of her health first. We can always get married. And so we postponed the wedding, and we got through her breast cancer, and we got married. It was that simple. Small gathering.
We called Samson.
Samson was actually married us, and it was just a small ceremony at our lake home.
I'll tell a little history. Is I had lost my husband to cancer. Steve had lost a wife to cancer, and I wrote out a list of what I wanted in a mate. And the first part was he had to be a Christian, and then the second part, he had to have had a loss in his life like I did.
Check.
So that he could understand what I was going through, and that person would never be 100% out of my life. And you can't always have that with everybody. Unless you've been through it, you can't understand it. One of the most important for me is if they love their family. And how their relationship with their family is. You love your family, and they're very close, and that meant a lot to me. And of course, their walk with God, and you really need to find out what their beliefs are, and you need to stay together for at least a couple of years, because after a year, you can't fake it too much longer. When you see the good and the bad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, when there's several things that you have to kind of be in agreement about, and in my mind with young people, and that is, finances. You gotta have are you got a budget? Can you live on a budget? Because money issues caused a lot of failed marriages. I mean, it's tremendous when you look at the fail rate of marriages that it has to do with finances. I don't know what the percentage is off the top of my head, but I know it's very high. But I was in the oil and gas business, and one of my good friends and I went in business for ourselves, started a company here in Oklahoma, and we were doing great, but oil prices started dropping. And I knew what my break-even was, and it was $27 a barrel was my break-even cost. And when oil got to $27 a barrel, I was like panicking and ready to step on the brakes. I came home, and Jeannie came over, and she's like, "What's the matter?" And because it was upsetting to me, and so I told her, I said, "You know, we're at break-even costs right now, and if oil prices don't change, I'm going to be in trouble." You know? And she said, "Oh, it's okay. My house is paid for. You can live with me."
Live in my house.
Yeah, you can live in my house. And she had no idea what my finances really were.
Not at that time.
Not at that time. And I wasn't that destitute. But the offer of her doing that, I said, "You know what? This gal will stick with you. That's what I want." But you know, that one really marked me. You know, she is willing to if I go bust, she's still going to love me and take me in, you know, like a stray dog.
I'm just concerned about him. You know, that's my friend. But he was okay.
Yeah, I was okay. It was the way I was raised. It comes from my upbringing. My father was a very generous man. My parents were tithers plus, right? I also had an upbringing where my parents gave me and all my brothers a really good foundation in finances. We grew up in a house where if I heard it once, I heard it a million times. You pay cash for your toys. Mm-hmm. You pay cash for your toys. That was my dad's line, pay cash for your toys. And my parents paid cash for everything except their house. They did have a house note. So I had that going for me. But then, like I said, my dad was also a very generous man. He was generous with his extended family, not just his family, but also my mom's family.
I think God gave it to me because I wasn't raised in a home like he was at all. Totally different. But I love giving. I've always loved giving. I don't care if it's cookies or whatever I could. It just is something that just feels really good.
Well, it's fun.
Within, it's fun. I have so much fun. My job for him is to find people to give to. And it is so much fun. And I never have to ask. Something's just led. It's always led, you know? Mm-hmm. It just comes, things I've never even known about. I go, oh my gosh. And then they need money or help to help others. And I love it.
And I think we're called to do that. As Christians, we are called to give. I mean, it's there clearly in the scriptures. And so I think it's pleasing to God when we do. And I think it's a blessing for the person that gives it. It's a blast.
It is.
It really is.
Cut up your credit cards.
Yeah.
And start paying off that student loan.
Yeah.
It'll eat you up for years, if not forever.
It will. You know, my children graduated without debt from college, but I saved for it, right? You know, student loans in this country are terrible. And what people need to realize is when you're married and you've got student loan, and both of my children married people who had student loan, so it's not like we're familiar with student loan, and it's important. It's important to Jeannie and I. Jeannie and I have been able to start 529s for all 14 of our grandchildren, and I think it's a great thing for people to do, to stop that cycle of student debt. Debt in general is dangerous. The Bible speaks about debt. It's not a sin, but the Bible speaks to it a lot, mostly in Proverbs. And Proverbs is a book of advice, and it's a book of advice to young men. And it's one of my favorite books, to be honest. And so it's very easy. Just Google debt, and it'll give you all the verses in Proverbs that speak to it.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that story impacted you as much as it impacted us.
So if you guys could like and subscribe, we would love to hear your feedback. If you have any about this video, let us know what you think in the comments below.